Hey there, curious history buffs. Have you heard the legend of the ancient race of giants of Nevada? Yes, I'm talking about actual giants that allegedly lived thousands of years ago. Now I know what you're thinking. Giants, really? Well, archaeological finds add fuel to this debate too. And here's where it gets interesting. Lovelock Cave was indeed used as a burial site, and some of the remains found there are much larger than average human bones. The cave is by the Humboldt Sink in western Nevada. It was once part of an enormous lake, which eventually dried up, leaving a number of smaller ones, including the Humboldt Sink. The cave became the home of the Site-Ka tribe. According to the legend, these red-haired giants were so big that they had to be buried in the cave itself. Indeed, later on, archaeologists discovered 8 to 10 foot tall skeletons. This legend started to unfold when a mining engineer named John T. Reed talked to the locals in 1886. Once Reed saw the cave, he knew he was onto something. The news spread soon, but the cave was attracting another type of attention too. The deposits of a fertilizer known as guano were discovered inside the cave. So a mining company began excavating the precious resource in 1911 and soon shipped more than 250 tons of the fertilizer to San Francisco. Unfortunately, some of the human remains and artifacts were neglected and lost in the mining process. This led to an official excavation in 1912 and 1924. After the top layer of guano had been mined, strange objects started to surface. Around the area, the earliest evidence of human habitation dates back about 4,000 years. The Lovelock culture lasted for some 3,000 years, and they left us with 10,000 stunning artifacts. The pits in the cave were like a series of time capsules hidden at different depths. Archaeologists determined the age of each pit by its depth. It turns out that many different groups used the cave for storage over a really long time, and the things they stored there give us a really cool glimpse into their cultures. It's like a giant ancient storage unit full of hidden treasures. What have the researchers found besides the giant bones, you might ask? Some other bodies were mummified using a method similar to the one applied by ancient Egyptians. These remains also had something in common with the bodies discovered as far south as Lake Titicaca. Both mummies had some red hair. Yet, there are scientists who believe this reddish hue is the result of the interaction with the environment in which the bodies stayed. So, while the story of the red-haired giants may be a wild and intriguing tale, not everyone is convinced. Some experts believe that the bones found in Lovelock Cave are simply the remains of prehistoric animals, like mammoths or sloths. But others insist that there's something more to the story. Other relics, such as finely crafted baskets and exquisite duck decoys made from tule fibers, were also found there. In any case, this cave is worth the attention it gets. By the way, you can still visit this cave today and see the pits of different depths with your own eyes. But let me tell you one thing. It's in a hot, dry, and isolated place. Archaeologists have made another discovery that seems to be straight out of a legend. They think they found the palace of the one and only Odysseus, who was the legendary Greek king of Ithaca and the hero of Homer's epic poem. Move over, Indiana Jones. We've got some real-life adventure happening here from around 1300 BCE. Apparently, this is the only palace mentioned in Homer's epic poems that hasn't been found. The excavations have been made on the Ionian Islands, and the view from the ruins found on the island of Ithaca are exactly as described in the Odyssey, says the professor who led the excavation team. Known to the ancient Romans as Ulysses, the Greek hero took 10 years to return home to Ithaca after the fall of Troy. For many years, Homer's other epic, called the Iliad, which tells the story of the protracted siege of Troy by the Greeks, was regarded as a myth too. But then, in the 1870s, Troy was rediscovered in modern-day Turkey's Çanakkale city. So, if they found Troy, who's to say they couldn't find Odysseus's home? The researchers were following Homer's words as a roadmap. The excavation site has a building complex with 2 levels. It has important finds, such as storerooms and workshops, a complicated drainage system, and fragments of pottery. It also has a well from the 8th century BCE, which is around the time when Odysseus is believed to have been the king. Yet, not everyone is convinced that the team has actually discovered the home of Odysseus. A British researcher named Robert Biddlestone insists that Homer's description of ancient Ithaca isn't very similar to the island that now has its name, and that Odysseus's kingdom was actually on the Isle of Cephalonia. However, Italian archaeologist Adriano La Regina might have a more realistic approach to this debate. He says that whether this find has a connection to Ulysses or not, what's more important is the discovery of this royal palace. Once upon a time, in a land far away, the Klamath Indians spread a legend about the creation of Crater Lake. Okay, maybe this land is not that far away, and it still exists. You can find it in south central Oregon, in the western United States. Anyway, the legend has it that this lake was formed in a vicious battle between 2 volcanoes, Mount Mazama and Mount Shasta. Then the spirits of Earth and the Sky, which are Lao, who ruled the below world, and Skell, the chief of the above world, joined the fight. It turned into a geological drama. During the battle, darkness veiled the land. The fight was over when Mount Mazama collapsed and sent Lao back into the underworld. Then the rain filled the pit and created a lake in the place where the mountain had once stood. Flash forward to our time. Scientists have discovered that Mount Mazama did erupt 7,700 years ago. Artifacts found in the area prove that the legend indeed contains some details about the explosion. The tale says that red-hot rocks were flying through the sky. This happened during the volcanic eruption that caused the mountain to collapse. This created the volcanic caldera, which later on got filled with water. What makes this legend came true story unusual is how long it has existed. According to researchers, these types of verbal stories lose their credibility within 600 to 700 years. That's why the legend about the creation of Crater Lake is so unique. So many generations, for hundreds of years, have been accurately passing down the information. This volcanic crater lake is now in a national park. It's famous for its deep blue color. The water in it is extremely clear. If you visit it today, the water you'll see won't be the same as for someone who will visit the place 250 years later. Because there are no rivers flowing into or out of the lake, the existing water evaporates and the lake gets filled again by rain and snowfall. Basically, every 250 years, the water is replaced. Plus, this lake is almost 2,000 feet deep, which makes it the deepest lake in the United States. Swimming is okay in the lake, but there's only one legal and safe trail to get to the shore. There are other activities, such as fishing and boat tours. Shared human experiences, such as birth, marriage, and aging, may explain why certain tales are shared globally. Similar struggles and obstacles faced by humans around the world generate similar themes in traditional stories about love, parenting, and mortality. So, do you have legends or tales you've heard of from your grandparents? Who knows? Maybe your ancestors too witnessed a cool historical event. You're walking down the street. You see a strange-looking antique shop called Ageless Trinkets of Mr. Bright. You're curious, so you enter there. You take a look at all the weird stuff. Suddenly, an old folded parchment paper catches your attention. It's a world map, but something's off with it. Instead of showing the countries as you know them, it shows the locations of 4 mythical lost worlds and civilizations. Mr. Bright, the shop owner, comes next to you after realizing your shock. This map won't let you find these places or anything, but I can explain to you the legends behind them if you want, he says. Let me begin with Atlantis. You might know it as Aquaman's underwater kingdom, but Atlantis, the fictional island, was actually first introduced in two of Plato's works. According to him, Atlantis was a highly advanced civilization that existed about 9,000 years before his own time, and its story had been passed down by poets, authors, and others. He wrote about Atlantis and its citizens to give a moral lesson and to teach about the dangers of arrogance, as well as the eventual downfall of those who are after too much power. In his dialogues, Plato stated that Atlantis was a great and powerful empire that was respected in all parts of the world. It was founded by beings who were half deities and half human, and became a great naval power after a while. Being an island filled with gold, silver, and other precious metals certainly helped their case. But besides that, it was also known for its breathtaking architecture and state-of-the-art technology, as well as its countless rare and exotic wild animals. Atlanteans were proud of their great achievements and the perfection of their civilization, but their excessive pride was going to bring their downfall. They believed they were so superior that they could gain control over any nation. This led them to launch a series of invasions. They conquered many of the Mediterranean lands, but when it was time to enter Athens, Athenians pushed back with an extraordinary force, so the Atlanteans were finally defeated. Plato stated that deities then got angry at Atlanteans because of how wicked, greedy, and immoral they became. So they punished them by sending earthquakes, which caused Atlantis to sink beneath the sea. Although the earliest written records of Atlantis were Plato's works, some people still believed his story to be based on truth and tried to identify the island of Atlantis with actual countries. Some people suggested it may have been located in the Mediterranean Sea, near the coast of Spain or Italy. Others thought it may have been located in the Caribbean, off the coast of Central or South America, but there was no solid evidence to support any of these claims. One theory, in particular, seemed more plausible than the others, though. Located in the Aegean Sea, the island of Santorini was the home of a highly advanced Minoan society. However, due to a huge volcanic eruption, it was destroyed about 3,600 years ago, causing the Minoan civilization to suddenly disappear. These similarities between the fictional Atlanteans and the historical Minoans made Santorini a good candidate for the speculations. Yet again, there were still major flaws with it, such as how the time when Plato said Atlantis was destroyed doesn't coincide with the time of Santorini's eruption. So Atlantis still continues to be regarded as nothing more than a popular legend in the scientific world. Now, let's move toward the northeast direction on the map, Mr. Bright says. According to Celtic Breton mythology, there once was a magnificent city called Ys, also known as Caris, that towered over Douarnenez Bay in France's Brittany region. It was the most wealthy city in the entire Atlantic. It was especially famous for its beautiful gardens and buildings, and its citizens were all living comfortably and happily there. Dahut, who was King Bradlon's daughter in Breton legends and literature, had a deep love for the sea. She begged her father to build a city at the edge of the sea, and that is how the city of Ys was established. Little did she know that she would be the one responsible for the destruction of her father's beloved gift. You see, since the city was surrounded by the sea, it needed to be protected by a dike equipped with floodgates, and these gates could only be opened at low tide. And the only one who had the keys to these gates was the king himself. One day, a handsome red knight arrived at the city, but couldn't pass the gates. Dahut was so taken by him that she wanted to let him in. She knew that her father was the keeper of the only key to the city, so she sneaked into his room and stole it from him. Then she gave it to the Red Knight so that he could enter the city and they could be together. However, the Red Knight turned out to be the Prince of Darkness, and he intentionally left the gate open to the raging sea. The waves soon swallowed all of Ys. King Gradlon was able to escape on his magical horse, but Dahut couldn't. She turned into an evil mermaid who lured sailors into the sea. Today, if you go to Quimper, a city in Brittany, northwest France, you can find the statue of King Gradlon riding on his horse. Although the city of Ypres is a legend, Brittany coast locals believe that on the days when the waters are calm, you can still hear the tolls of the city bells deep under the sea, if you listen carefully. Mr. Bright then points at the Indian Ocean on the map and says, "Now, have you heard about Lemuria?" Back in the mid-1800s, a few scientists suggested that there was once a continent that existed in the Indian Ocean, somewhere close to the south of modern-day Sri Lanka. The first one to popularize this theory was the British lawyer and zoologist Philip Lutley Sclater. In his paper, The Mammals of Madagascar, he stated that he found lemur fossils in India and not in Africa. However, this discovery was extremely shocking to him because of the fact that lemurs' original homeland, Madagascar, is much closer to Africa. He proposed that this was possible only if some larger continent connected the two once. He stated that this continent must have eventually sunk to the ocean floor. He then named it Lemuria, and hence the theory was born. People who came after Sclater took his theory a step further and thought that Lemuria was also the home of an extinct race of humans called Lemurians, who had 4 arms and enormous bodies, and were also the ancestors of modern-day humans, as well as lemurs. Of course, as new scientific discoveries were made on plate tectonics, evolution, and the study of DNA, the theories regarding the fictional continent called Lemuria were debunked. The last fictional land on the map is Agartha, Mr. Bright says. Taking its roots from Eastern mysticism, one legend says there's a kingdom called Agartha that is located deep beneath the surface of the earth. It's where all 4 corners of the world are connected by paths and tunnels. It is said that there's a secret entrance into Agartha hidden in the Gobi Desert, and it's built by Agarthans themselves using advanced technology that can't be detected by us, the surface folks. According to some beliefs, Agartha exists to counterbalance the energies of those who live above the surface. While we live in a state of rush and heightened emotions, this world beneath us is the total opposite. Some even say that those who escaped Atlantis fled here to continue their lives inside the Earth's core. And yet, others think it's actually a land that's crawling with all kinds of monsters. But there's no need to be scared, since modern science proved Earth's core is not actually hollow and is a solid hot iron ball. So you can cancel your journey plans to the center of the Earth if you've made any. Thanks, Mr. Bright.
47-year-old Kenny Veach told his family he was going hiking for 2 days. His destination? The Mojave Desert. The man wanted to revisit a cave he had discovered during one of his previous hikes. But that was the last time anyone had seen Kenny Veach. A helicopter and over 30 search and rescue teams came back empty. The hiker was nowhere to be found. Was the mysterious M Cave behind his disappearance? The oddest thing about Kenny's case is the fact that he was a seasoned hiker. He often went on solo trips to explore deserts in California and Nevada. The man was an ultralight hiker. That meant he brought only the most basic of supplies: water, food, and a tent. That's all. But this was enough for several days of camping in the desert. Kenny would rarely bring a GPS device with him. He didn't even bother to pack a compass or a map. Some would call him reckless, but he managed to get back home every single time. Kenny wasn't shy either. He had a YouTube channel where he regularly posted his adventures. He named his channel Snakebit McGee because he picked up snakes wherever he went. But Kenny also had another habit. He went into every cave he found in the desert. Now, he didn't post many videos. Kenny mostly used YouTube to comment on other people's adventures. In a comment from June 2014, the man revealed that he had discovered a mysterious M-shaped cave. It was located in the Sheep Mountains of North Las Vegas. Kenny's description of the cave is where the weird part of the story begins. He spotted it while hiking and noticed the cave had an interesting entrance. It was shaped like a perfect letter M. Kenny went up to it, but something didn't seem right. He reported that his body started to shake as he approached the cave. The vibrations were so strong near the entrance that Kenny turned back. In his own words, he was scared for his life. It must have really been something if it frightened an experienced trekker. Kenny had an impressive track record. He had been hiking for 20 years. He explored caves other people were too afraid to even enter. Once, he was bitten by a rattlesnake and had to spend a week in the hospital. On his journeys, the man found skulls of all shapes and sizes, as well as old animal traps. Kenny slept on mountain peaks under the stars. One time, he hurt his leg on a mountaintop. He had to walk 20 miles back to his truck. It was 100 degrees Fahrenheit that day, and Kenny had 1 cup of water to keep him going. Kenny Veach was a true survivalist. But this one cave was a mystery to him. He admitted that he was totally unprepared that day. He had the tools to open a can, but not to fight the mysterious force that took over his body. But Kenny wasn't a quitter. He made plans to return to the M Cave, and this time, he was going to be ready. He did so several months later, but much better equipped. But the trip turned out to be a bust. He recorded a video, but couldn't find the cave. Was that it? Was the brave explorer finally going to quit? Not by a long shot. His followers on social media wanted him to solve the mystery. So he went out into the desert for the 3rd time. He planned a short, overnight trip, but nobody ever saw him again. After 2 days, his family alerted the authorities. They quickly launched a search for the missing man. Now we come to the weird part. In one of his videos, Kenny stood in front of an abandoned mine shaft. This is where he briefed the viewers on the mission. Rescue teams reached this point and found Kenny's phone. This was 10 days into the search, but the trail soon went cold. The rescuers feared the worst. They decided to send a camera down the shaft, but didn't find anything. For a full month, no one had any idea where Kenny was. And then, the mystery deepened. An unknown woman came forward online. She claimed to be the missing man's girlfriend. The mysterious woman told the story of how she went with Kenny on hour-long hikes. She urged hikers to use GPS not to get lost. And then, a claim that shocked social media users. The woman believed Kenny's disappearance wasn't an accident. She revealed that her alleged boyfriend had some serious issues. Apparently, he had quit his job a year prior to his disappearance. Did Kenny Veach really trek into the desert to take his own life? People weren't convinced. Kenny's daughter believed her father just had an accident. In her words, he was a survivor. Was the mysterious M Cave responsible for his disappearance? Did he find someone or something he shouldn't have found there? The questions linger, and so did the theories among the online community. Fellow hikers and YouTubers were determined to find the M Cave. This would solve Kenny Veach's mysterious disappearance once and for all. In 2021, one hiker got lucky. He claimed to have found the secretive M Cave. For safety reasons, the man couldn't reveal his exact location. The cave sits somewhere near Nevada State Route 375 East. The entrance to the cave really looked like an oversized letter M, just like Veach described it. But the shape is too hard to notice from ground level. Only when you look at it from above is the M shape visible. Who knows, hikers might have been walking past it for years without noticing the cave. Even Kenny couldn't locate the entrance the second time he went looking for it. The cave wasn't very deep, but there was something odd at the entrance. There appears to have been a straight line of rocks. Did someone try to wall off the entrance? And at the back of the cave, there was an even stranger find. Small pieces of wood were scattered along the floor. They looked a lot like 2x4s that are used in construction. Was there a door here once? The hiker found a nail sticking out of the stone. It could be part of a latch that was there some time ago. But the strangest part was the writing on the wall. Hatch or Veach? It's hard to tell. The hiker that discovered the cave didn't want to stay to find out. He left the cave in a hurry. No, it wasn't because he felt a strange vibration in his body like Kenny. He just didn't want to be in a desert cave in the middle of nowhere. This is the Mojave Desert, one of the most dangerous landscapes on Earth. Could this setting better explain how Kenny Veach disappeared without a trace in 2014? The desert's nickname is well-deserved. This is where scientists recorded the hottest temperature on the planet. 134 degrees Fahrenheit, and the average temperature during summer, just 113 degrees Fahrenheit, no sweat. But you'll also need a blanket. At night, the air temperatures drop well below freezing. Talk about a climate roller coaster. And the list of dangers doesn't end there. The driest and hottest place in the United States is home to dangerous animals. Mountain lions, venomous lizards, spiders, and wasps. You name it. Any one of these animals can end the life of an unsuspecting hiker. There is a reason why Kenny always wore snake guards when trekking. And then there are mine shafts. Local authorities strongly advise hikers not to enter them. These old mines from the 1800s are highly unstable. A person can easily fall down a hidden shaft. They also have pockets of bad air, which can suffocate a person. And remember the likable wildlife? They too live in these shafts. Rattlesnakes, scorpions, and black widow spiders. Kenny Veach could have easily fallen into one of these shafts, and there would be no help for him from miles around, since Nevada is one of the least populated states.
In 1991, somewhere in the lush jungles of central Vietnam, a local logger found a mysterious hole among the foliage and bushes. He looked in there and felt a strong wind blowing into his face. Then he heard a strange sound from the cave depths and realized that it was the sound of a river. The logger didn't check the cave, but decided to go back there with a flashlight and a rope. When he returned, he couldn't find the cave anywhere. He spent a few years searching for it. Finally, in the 2000s, the logger managed to locate it again. In 2009, he brought scientists to this place. They found out the cave, called Sundong, is the largest in the world. There's so much space here that you'll hear a long echo if you shout. Sundong's main passage reaches 660 feet in height in some places, which is more than half as tall as the Empire State Building. The area of the cave is so huge that an entire New York City block with 40-story skyscrapers would fit in there. There's a deep underground labyrinth under the jungles of Vietnam, hiding 3 of the largest caves in the world, and Sundong is number 1 on this list. The vast space inside is filled with various plants, unique microclimates, and different landscapes. There's a real jungle growing underground. It became possible thanks to the collapsed ceiling in some places. It lets sunlight penetrate there from above. There are huge stalactites 250 feet high on the ceilings and walls, which is more than the length of a passenger Boeing. They've been here between hundreds of thousands and millions of years. Some limestone deposits are more than 450 million years old. It means they've existed since the time long before the dinosaurs. Besides the jungle, there are also many rivers in the cave. They were formed because of rainwater coming down from holes in the ceiling. These rivers are smooth and fast, like slides in a water park. But riding them isn't the best idea, since they can carry you into one of those long labyrinths that the cave is full of. And we still don't know where they're going. You may find yourself in another unknown part of the cave. This is what happened in 2018. 3 divers accidentally discovered new areas in Sundong. The cave turned out to be much bigger than everyone thought. They dove into one of the cave's lakes and reached a depth of 256 feet. At the bottom, they found a separate tunnel. Divers lowered a fishing line with a lead weight there and found out that this place reaches a depth of 394 feet, and the tunnel is more than half a mile long. We still don't know the exact size of the tunnel. Sundong also connects to another huge cave. There are lots of things you can see in Sundong besides underground labyrinths and rivers. You can find spacious rooms with lakes, and you can walk for hours along dark mountain corridors. This place is strikingly beautiful, but dangerous at the same time. And the coolest thing is that you can take a walk here. Since 2013, Sundong Cave has been open to tourists. It's not just an easy walk to take some selfies though. The expedition to the cave lasts for several days. For the first day and a half, you'll explore the 3rd largest cave in the world. And only after that, you'll reach Sundong. The path will take you through rivers, dense jungles, mountains, and rocks. You can meet many exotic birds, monkeys, and other animals. And according to many people, the way to the cave is even more impressive than the cave itself. When you reach your destination, you'll spend the next few days exploring Sundong. Together with other tourists, professional guides, and porters, you'll be sleeping in tents in different places in the cave every day. You'll see some stunning landscapes and, get ready for this, 400-million-year-old majestic fossils. There are also dark rooms with lakes that are good for swimming. Such adventurous expeditions become more popular every year. People who visited the cave call it the most amazing place they've ever seen. Another amazing cave is located in Indonesia, on the island of Flores. It's quite small, but holds amazing things inside. In 2003, a group of scientists discovered ancient artifacts here, including fossils of primitive tools, such as sharpened stones. Scientists realized that hundreds of thousands of years ago, this place was home to our distant ancestors. Then they found a very unusual female skeleton. That woman was only 3.5 feet tall. This is the height of the waistline of an average adult person. That woman had no problems with her spine or with the development of her bones, though. This and other skeletons found in the cave belong to some unknown human ancestors. Scientists called this species Homo floresiensis, or simply, Hobbit. The woman's weight was about 35 to 79 pounds. Analysis of the skull and bones showed she was about 30 years old. Hobbits probably lived on Earth between 190,000 and 50,000 years ago. There's a chance they met the ancestors of modern humans. The next cave is in Turkey. Imagine that you live in an old house and decide to make some repairs. You throw all the old stuff out of the rooms. The last place to sort out is your basement. You've hardly ever visited it and have no idea what's hidden there. But it's pretty spacious, so you decide to turn it into a room. You tear down the wall and discover the entrance to the cave. This is a tunnel that leads underground. You walk through the cave and see a real underground city. This happened in Turkey in 1963. One of the locals discovered a secret passage to a lost city in his basement. About 20,000 people could live there. There was enough space for livestock and food supplies. It's not just a maze of tunnels. There's a chapel, a school, stables, kitchens, walls, and other signs of civilization. The city was built in the Byzantine era, in the years 780 through 1180. It's not the only one down there and is connected to many underground tunnels and towns that stretch for several miles. Let's finish our journey in the strangest and most frightening cave. We're going to the southeast of Romania, near the Black Sea. Here, on a desolate wide plain, you can find a hole. This is a tunnel leading deep underground. The air inside the cave has high levels of hydrogen sulfide and carbon dioxide. Under normal conditions, the air we breathe contains around 20% oxygen, but it's only 10% here. You won't be able to breathe freely without an oxygen tank. The water and air here are poisoned. Almost no animals are able to live in such conditions, at least the ones we know about. And this cave is filled with 48 species of living organisms, 33 of which are new unknown species. Creeping things that live here can scare you, especially if you're afraid of bugs. Strange white snails and white spiders are crawling along the walls. An unknown species of leeches and transparent shrimp are swimming in the water. White millipedes with huge mustaches are creeping on the ground. Here you can also meet an unknown kind of scorpion with a transparent white body that doesn't look like any other kind of scorpion. Nothing here looks like ordinary animals at all. All creatures in the cave are white or transparent. They don't have eyes, but they have long paws and antennae whiskers that help to navigate in space. Plants can't live here without sunlight and clean air. This means that oxygen isn't produced in this place. So how do these creatures manage to survive? The answer is in the water. The surface of the lake and puddles here is covered with strangely moving foam. This substance is a living organism. It consists of 1 billion bacteria called autotrophs. Ordinary plants absorb carbon dioxide, and use photosynthesis to produce oxygen. This cave is filled with carbon dioxide. Autotrophs absorb it and secrete tiny food particles. Bacteria feed on these particles. Larger organisms then feed on those bacteria, and so on. In the end, there's enough food for everyone. This process is called chemosynthesis. It's like photosynthesis, but uses water instead of sunlight in its chemical reactions. In this cave, evolution has created a completely unique biological system, separate from the rest of the world.
You are lost deep within the jungle in the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico. There are strange noises all around you, and to make it worse, the sun is setting. Soon, you'll be alone in the middle of an unknown rainforest. Guess it was a pretty bad idea to come looking for El Dorado on your own, wasn't it? You keep walking as fast as you can when suddenly, wait, what's this you're seeing? It looks like large stairways made out of stone. This definitely doesn't look natural, so you take a picture. Maybe you didn't strike gold, but you might have just found something relevant. Congratulations, you found Akamtun, a long-lost Mayan city, hidden 37 miles into the jungle. The name literally translates to stone column. Stone was probably in at the time, so these guys used a lot of it to build their pyramids, houses, and even ball courts. If you ever thought that Europeans invented ball games, think twice. Mayans love to play ball games for recreational purposes. Akamtun is part of a series of other long-lost Mayan cities that are being discovered with the help of new technology nowadays. We'll talk more about the other ones in a jiffy. Perhaps the biggest surprise of this one is that it was surrounded by wetlands, which is why the city was built on high ground. The city was monumental, covering an area of over 120 acres. That would be as big as 90 football fields right next to each other. Scientists have found proof that Akamtun had pyramids of up to 49 feet high, and that it was likely an important social hub between 250 and 1000 CE. This is definitely a game changer. But lost Mayan cities began to be unearthed in the 19th century. Modern technologies, such as LiDAR imaging, help archaeologists see through dense canopies of the forests. This means that people don't really have to risk getting lost in the tropical jungle like you did at the beginning of this video. LiDAR works sort of like an X-ray. It sends out laser beams that can detect any signs of ruins or ancient constructions. According to space archaeologist Sarah Parchak, satellite imagery has been a key player in discovering ancient cities in South America, Egypt, and other places. Sarah herself spends most of her days scouring images for any signs of where there could have been cities long ago. She says that more often than not, what happens is that ruins are covered by vegetation, soil, or sand, which makes them super tricky to find. But thanks to these awesome tools, scientists also made the huge discovery of ancient Mayan causeways, which spread throughout old Mayan territories. I mean, take a look at these roadways. You'd expect to see ruins like this in places such as Portugal, England, or the United States. I'm talking about 130 feet wide roads painted white to help travelers journey through the nighttime. Scientists recently unearthed a 110-mile network of roads such as these, and they think this dates back to before the first registered Mayan highways we've known so far. These roadways, which sometimes ran over the swampy ground and were even elevated at times, are being called the world's first superhighways. Even if there is no registry of animal-powered vehicles, it's believed that the Maya used them to travel around a network of possible 964 settlements. They were built like a huge spiderweb, and from what archaeologists have gathered, this huge system of roads worked to connect a big system of economic and social interactions between Mayan cities. This completely debunks the traditional idea that the Mayan pre-classic period, which dates back to 2000 BCE, was made of small, tribal settlements. Imagine the manpower and engineering ability you need to muster to build something close to these white highways. Scientists believe that these causeways were built pretty much the same way as the Mayans built their pyramids, with a mixture of mud and quarry stone. Oh, and using several layers of limestone to make them white. That's pretty cool, right? But let's take a few steps back for a moment to get some context. The Mayans were one of the biggest pre-Columbian civilizations living in the Americas. Until now, experts believe that at its apex, the Mayan civilization consisted of over 40 cities with a population of millions of people. That's a lot of folks. Their civilization spanned Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula, Guatemala, and Belize. And they survived mainly on agriculture. The thing is, the Yucatan Peninsula was an extremely difficult place to grow crops. So the Mayans had to develop a complex irrigation system in most of their cities. They built a series of ceremonial buildings, pyramids, and plazas. The Mayans might have been keen pyramid builders, but they also developed an advanced astronomical system. With whatever ancient technology they had, they were able to predict the exact location of planets such as Venus and Mars, as well as the exact dates of eclipses. If you've ever seen examples of ancient Mayan cities, this is Tikal. Located at the heart of the Guatemalan jungle, Tikal is believed to have been the capital of the ancient Mayan conquest state. At its height, it was comparable in importance to cities such as London or New York in today's world. It's composed of a series of complex monuments. The North Acropolis is one of Tikal's most ancient complexes of monuments. Built solely by human hands around 350 BCE, it served as the resting place of kings and chiefs. Its monuments are up to 200 feet high. Back in the day, the step pyramid temples were painted a beautiful red. Mayans loved that color. Today, of course, you'll only see the limestone. Then there's Chichen Itza. It's got one of the best preserved pyramids on Earth to date. Located in Mexico's Yucatan state, this Mayan city is well over 1,500 years old. At its peak, it was home to 35,000 people. The site covers 4 square miles of land. The highlight is El Castillo, a tremendous step-like temple standing 80 feet above ground. Its most peculiar feature is that it has 91 steps up each of its 4 sides, including the upper platform, which makes for 365 steps, the same number of days as the solar year. You can see that these folks were a pretty big deal, huh? That's why nobody can really understand what happened to them. There's a big lack of evidence on the decline of this almighty empire. What could have been the cause of their demise? Was it a drought? New research in 2017 did bring some new discoveries into the mix. Using data from a site at Ceibal, located at southwest of Tikal, scientists analyzed radiocarbon data from ceramics and archaeological excavations to extract new information about the unexpected demise of this great civilization. The information shows that instead of a sudden collapse, the Mayans most likely fell in waves of social instability and political crises. These events are believed to have deteriorated Mayan city centers and began causing the dispersion of the Mayan population. It's hard to pinpoint the exact causes, though. But hey, recent discoveries are shedding a big light on humanity's past. Not only about the Mayan Empire, but about other long-lost civilizations of South America. A major recent discovery in Brazil was done using satellite imaging technology and is also shocking scientists. Some images from near the Xingu River, also in the Amazon, suggest that cities of millions of people might have existed inside the jungle, way before our modern civilization ever existed. I mean, if this doesn't shock you, I don't know what will. Satellite imagery also detected a network of trenches dating back to 200 and 1200 CE in the Bolivian Amazon forest. These proofs suggest settlements that could have supported around 60,000 people right in the middle of the Amazon forest. When researchers from the University of Florida went on ground to check the satellite information, they were shocked to find several mounds that were accompanied by ditches and geoglyphs. Archaeologists also found remnants of carefully designed walls centered around plazas, much like the type of construction done by the ancient Mayans.
So, what's the longest you can survive without looking at your phone or watch to check the time? My personal record is about 13 minutes. But someone has no trouble living without knowing the time for 63 days. In the summer of 1962, a French chap named Michel Siffre took off his watch and went down into a cave in the French Alps. The then 23-year-old spent the next couple of months in complete isolation and without seeing the sun. And that's how he accidentally became the founder of a whole field of science called chronobiology, or the study of biological rhythms. Michel's original plan was to study an underground glacier he had discovered earlier. He wanted to spend 15 days underground, but then thought it wouldn't be enough to do serious research and decided to stay there for 2 months in the dark. It wasn't the comfiest of vacations, as his feet were always wet, and his body temperature was way lower than usual. He spent his free time reading, writing, thinking about his future, and studying his surroundings. He also slept well and ate when he felt like it. There was a team waiting at the entrance of the cave. They agreed the scientist would let them know when he woke up, ate, and before going to sleep. The team wasn't allowed to contact him, just to record when he was sending signals to make sure he was safe and sound and keep track of his life cycle. Siffre also informed them of his pulse and counted from 1 to 120, 1 digit per second. And that's how they found out his perception of time was seriously off. It took him 5 minutes to finish that task instead of the regular 2 minutes. When the team told him it was time to get out of the cave, he was confident it was only August, but it was already the 14th of September. Siffre thinks it had to do with an almost total absence of light. He had just a little light bulb in the cave. It all felt like one long day to him, and his memory couldn't keep track of what he was doing yesterday or 2 days before. The most important result of his experiment was proving that people, just like animals, do have an internal clock that doesn't depend on the day and night cycles. Siffre didn't stop there and went on dozens of expeditions to spend some time inside caves. 10 years later, he started a 6-month experiment in Texas. All this helped him to find that when people don't have time cues, they switch to a 48-hour cycle, not the 24 one we're used to. It would be 36 hours of activity and 12 to 14 hours of sleep. NASA used the results of his experiments to help astronauts who had short-term memory issues after some time in isolation. Now, in 2021, a Spanish woman beat Siffre's cave record. Beatriz Flamini spent 500 days in a cave outside of Granada with basically no contact with the rest of the world. She insisted that the support crew wouldn't give her any news at all, even if something happened to her family members. The idea of this rough experiment was to test her own limits and also help scientists understand how staying in such extreme conditions affects the human mind and body. During the experiment called Time Cave, Flamini received food from a drop-off point and sent GoPro videos of herself to the support crew. They checked the footage to make sure she was physically and mentally fine. Flamini spent the entire time working out, reading books, painting, weaving, and making food. She didn't shower, but the support team took out her natural waste once every 5 days. At some point, flies filled the cave, but Flamini braved on and continued the experiment. Around day 300, she had to leave the cave and stay in a tent in isolation for about 8 days because of a technical issue. When 500 days elapsed, the support crew found Flamini sleeping. She had lost track of time completely and said it always felt like 4 a.m. to her. She didn't want to leave as she hadn't finished the book she was reading. Although she started hearing things that weren't real and had a strong craving for roast chicken, the extreme athlete never even considered leaving the time cave earlier than planned. Researchers from several Spanish universities will analyze the data from this unusual experiment. Intricate biological rhythms govern our lives, from the smallest cellular processes to the functioning of the entire body. These rhythms regulate various aspects of your physiology, including sleep patterns, body temperature, hormonal balance, metabolism, and cardiovascular activity. Many diseases get stronger during nighttime or in the morning. Shift work disrupts the balance between internal rhythms and external time, so scientists blame it for diseases. Jet lag is a good example of how your internal clock gets out of whack because you move to a different time zone. But light, especially when you catch it at certain times, can help reset your body clock. When you see light at the end of the night, it nudges your clock forward, and early evening light can push it back a bit. It takes about a day for your body to catch up with each hour of time difference. And since our natural body clock ticks around 24.2 hours, it's easier for us to adjust to longer days out west than shorter ones out east. That's why when athletes or researchers live underground for a while, they end up feeling like they're in a time warp. Back in the 70s, scientists found the circadian clock mechanism in a fruit fly. It has to do with different genes. One gene revs up the other, which then puts the brakes on the first gene, creating a swinging rhythm. During the day, when the sun's up, a photoreceptor tells certain parts of the loop to relax. There's a whole complex network of molecules and neurons making sure everything ticks just right. Every living thing's got its own circadian clock, with its own set of clock genes doing the work. Besides light, other stuff, like temperature and food, helps sync up an organism's clock with the outside world. Now, if you're feeling adventurous and want to try cave isolation yourself, how about the deepest one on our planet, Veryovkina Cave? It only got this title in early 2018. It was explored step by step, deeper and deeper. The first expedition to this cave in the West Caucasus only explored around 5% of it, but it was already nearly 400 feet. It was obvious there was much more to this cave, with a small entrance diving into the limestone of Earth's crust. Expeditions from all over the world went back there until they finally reached the bottom. The world's second, third, and fourth deepest caves are all nearby, hiding deep in the mountains of the Arabica Massif. It is one of the largest karst massives on Earth, but it's still not well explored because it's really tricky to get to this area, only accessible up to 4 months of the year because of weather conditions. Going all the way down there is really tricky and takes several days. There are underwater waterfalls with near-freezing water, flooding, obstructed entrances, and other surprise dangers. So if you aren't ready for the deepest of them, you could go with the longest one. Mammoth Cave in Kentucky has over 400 miles of limestone labyrinths already explored and probably around 600 miles still to discover. Over 500,000 people visit the cave every year as part of organized tours. You can choose between a classical and more extreme version, learn about the cave's cultural history, or attend a concert within its stone walls. You can also enjoy meeting over 100 wildlife species living there. One of the most famous and unusual of them is the eyeless cavefish. It has adapted to the environment without light by no longer growing eyes.
Over millions of years, our planet has changed a lot. Ice ages, shifting tectonic plates, global floods, meteorites. Whole species of animals have come and gone over millennia. At some point in all of this, we humans came along. Now imagine a place that was cut off from the rest of the world for 5.5 million years, possibly much more. A place that no human had ever set foot in before. In 1986, we finally found it. Movila Cave. You head to the airport and buy a ticket to Romania. Next, you rent a car and drive southeast. You're looking for Constanța County, right near the Black Sea. Your phone says you're there, so you stop the car and look around. You're in the middle of a deserted field, nothing but a wide, lifeless plain. Then, you see it. A hole in the ground. As you move closer, you realize it's a shaft that leads deep down into the Earth's crust. Before you descend into the darkness, you take a rope, a hard hat, a powerful flashlight, and an oxygen tank. Don't forget to wear your protective suit and oxygen mask. You climb down slowly and look around. It's pitch dark below you, and you feel a little uneasy. But something's off. The darkness. It's not cold. Warm air wafts up from the depths. Finally, you feel the ground under your feet. You look around and see a lot of tunnels ahead that lead into the depths of the cave. The tunnels are covered with dry clay. Moving forward on all fours, you notice something. The air is getting warmer and wetter. You come out of a narrow tunnel and find yourself in a huge cave with a lake in the center. Now for the hard part. You have to dive in. The moment you get in the water, you get attacked by the smell of rotten eggs. You've just touched sulfide water, and now smelly hydrogen sulfide is everywhere. That's not all. The cave is also filled with carbon dioxide. Normal fresh air on the surface is about 20% oxygen, but here it's only 10%. Not enough for us to survive without our trusty oxygen tank. Still, all those other gases give you a nasty headache. You turn on your flashlight to full power and dive under. Somehow, you need to swim through these narrow underwater rifts. There are a lot of them. It looks like an underwater maze. You're a little worried, but your O2 tank is still pretty full. You squeeze through the rifts and finally find an open area. You freeze. From above, below, from all sides, you start to hear the sound of crawling creatures. The flashlight beam catches thousands of slippery, fast insects. This cave contains 48 species, 33 of which are completely new to us. Strange white snails crawl along the walls, and transparent shrimps, even small leeches, swim in the water. White centipedes with huge whiskers and transparent spiders shuffle around under your feet. There are even 2 species of scorpion, as if you weren't scared enough. Water scorpions, and another kind, as yet unidentified. It's not exactly your typical desert scorpion. Actually, nothing around here looks normal. All the creatures here are white or transparent. They don't have eyes, just long legs and whisker antennas that help them navigate in the watery darkness. It's a sci-fi director's paradise. You couldn't make this stuff up. The deeper you go into the cave, the less oxygen there is. Amazingly, there are even more small monsters running around. The air is all methane and carbon dioxide. These bizarre little things have never seen the sun, never been out of this cave. The spiders, scorpions, and leeches get hungry, right? They feed on smaller creatures, snails and worms. But what do the smallest creatures eat? Just then, you notice something very strange on the surface of the water. There's a gross white substance that looks like foam. You touch it carefully. It's like wet toilet paper, and it tears as soon as you touch it. But it's not foam or paper. It's billions of living organisms, bacteria, called autotrophs. These bacteria make food from carbon dioxide, but they don't make it from the air like plants or trees. They use water. It's called chemosynthesis. These tiny bacteria excrete their unused food, and bigger ones come along and eat it. Then the tiny snails and worms eat the big bacteria. A whole wacky, unique food cycle deep underground in a random cave in Romania. That's why you need that protective suit and mask. It's not just for your comfort and safety. Without the suit, you might accidentally leave behind some human bacteria from your skin or something. It could ruin the delicate balance of life in this underwater world. The underwater cave is too small and dangerous for expensive scientific equipment, so you grab a couple of samples of water, land, and air and get out of there as fast as possible. The cave hasn't been fully explored yet. The Romanian authorities don't allow just anyone to scuba dive on down there. Let's see in a few years. Who knows what else they'll find? You're back at your fancy lab, and you start to understand why that cave is such a big deal. The conditions in Mobile are almost the same as in the first years of Earth's existence. Back then, our world was shielded from the sun by a dense atmosphere. It's actually possible that the microbes found in the cave are the same ones that were around way back when life began. These bacteria could turn out to be incredibly useful. They oxidize the dangerous gases, methane, and carbon dioxide. Basically, they make them harmless. Thanks, little guys. Mobile Cave isn't the only extreme place on Earth where life still finds a way to survive and thrive. Picture the Eiffel Tower in Paris. Now imagine 10 of them on top of each other. Now imagine drilling down that deep. Got it? Life still goes on, even this far down. There's almost no oxygen there. The pressure is insanely high, and it's hotter than the hottest desert. Welcome to the nematode empire. Nematodes are worms, and these wiggly dudes are tough as nails. When there's no air, no food, or it's just too hot, they transform. It's called the dower stage. It's a state of stasis, of deep hibernation. The worm's metabolism slows way down. It's like they go to sleep for a long time and only wake up when there's enough air or food around, or when it gets cool enough. And you don't have to dig that deep to find these creatures. Nematodes are found all over the world. They live in hot springs, in deserts, high up in the mountains, in the harsh cold of Antarctica, inside animals, and even inside the human body. You don't have to travel to Mars to find out of this world scenery. There are places on Earth that look unreal. The Danakil Depression in Ethiopia is one of the hottest, driest, and most inaccessible places anywhere on Earth. It's a large desert that gets almost no rain, but there's still plenty of liquid around. It sits on 2 active volcanoes, so liquid hot magma often flows up from under the Earth's crust. There are also colorful lakes full of acidic water. The salt from the lakes reacts with volcanic minerals, making bizarre figures that look like the backdrop of a sci-fi movie. Toxic gases and chlorine vapors rise up from the lakes, making it one of the most dangerous places on Earth. You need a gas mask to survive, but life always finds a way. There are living things here, even in a lake so hot that the acidic water actually boils. Microbes live happily in the lakes and surrounding rocks. If something can survive here, who knows? You can find another tough survivor in the Lut Desert in Iran. They've just discovered a new and special kind of crustacean there. These creatures live in small lakes that appear from time to time thanks to desert rains. This species can survive for decades in dry sediments, just waiting for a tiny bit of water. So these are all very small life forms, but are you in the mood for some monsters? Scientists have just discovered them swimming in the waters off Antarctica. Massive sea spiders, huge starfish, transparent shrimp-like things. In 1 month, researchers found about 30,000 sea creatures, many of them never seen before. Who knows what else is down there?
Imagine dark labyrinths, deep, deep underground. They're full of hidden dangers and unexpected discoveries. Get your flashlight and let me take you on a tour of the spookiest caves of all time. And the first destination on our list is Cathedral Caverns in Alabama. Originally, this place was called Bat Cave, but it was later renamed because of what it looks like. As you approach it, you can't help but notice its huge entrance, measuring 126 feet wide and 25 feet high. But this grand entrance is just the beginning. Inside the cave, there are some of the most beautiful formations nature has ever created. One of the most famous of them is probably Goliath, a giant 45 feet tall stalagmite with a circumference of 243 feet. Other amazing sights you might want to visit include a caveman balancing on top of a flowstone wall, a frozen waterfall, and a forest of tall stalagmites. You're probably curious, how did such an exciting place make it onto the list of the scariest caves out there? The thing is, the sheer size of the cave is still unknown, and only about 2 miles of it are mapped and open to the public. But the cave can and does show its dangerous side from time to time. For example, the directors of the 1984 sci-fi movie What Waits Below filmed a lot of scenes in Cathedral Caverns. But during the shooting, 17 cast and crew members got carbon monoxide poisoning and had to be immediately taken to a hospital, barely avoiding serious consequences. But let's move further to Moaning Cavern in California. What makes it particularly creepy is the bizarre breathing sound. It's produced by water dripping through bottle-like openings at the base of the cave. If a person who's unaware of the nature of this breathing comes close, this ominous respiration might cause them to steer clear of the place. On the other hand, these moaning sounds might have evoked curiosity in some adventurous souls, and usually it didn't end well. Researchers have found the remains of more than 100 prehistoric people who fell down the cave's 410-foot chasm around 13,000 years ago. These days, you can go on a tour around the cave, but no deeper than 165 feet into the vertical opening. If you're feeling particularly bold, you can rappel down. But you'll still have to exit using a Gothic-looking wrought iron staircase. Be careful not to slip. It's a long way down. The next cave we'll visit is ominously called Hellhole. You can find it in West Virginia. It's notorious enough to inspire a few horror movies. Despite its name, the place is chilly, but no less creepy for this discrepancy. The average temperature inside the cave is 47 degrees Fahrenheit, which makes it the perfect home for a large variety of bats and other rare cave-dwelling inhabitants. In fact, in the winter, the cave accommodates about half of the world's population of Virginia big-eared bats. These are critically endangered and highly vulnerable creatures. But it won't stop a chill from running down your spine once you see a cloud of 20,000 squeaking, wing-fluttering bats. Bell Witch Cave is a relatively small formation located in Tennessee. And despite its innocent appearance, it serves as the focal point for an equally fantastic and terrifying story. According to the legend, in the early part of the 19th century, the farmer and his family suffered from the mischief of a ghost. It made a lot of noise at night, ripped sheets from beds, and even physically attacked the farmer and some of his family members. Eventually, the farmer passed away, and a vial with unknown black liquid was found next to him. Some people believed that the ghost had somehow poisoned him. Soon after that, the spirit left the farmer's family alone. Locals were sure the ghost had returned to a cave near the farm. They also believed the mystical creature promised to return when the time was right. Even today, local inhabitants report strange occurrences happening around the cave. They swear they are linked to the ghost once taunting the farmer's family. I bet that no matter how skeptical you are, the cave will make your skin crawl. And this is Wind Cave in South Dakota. At first glance, it might seem that there's nothing super scary about this cavern. No roiling mass of bats, no ancient remains or toxic gases. But the cave is home to a blood-chilling and very rare geological feature. Nowhere else in the world will you find a more extensive network of boxwork calcite. How did Wind Cave create the perfect conditions for the boxwork remains? It's still a mystery, but what you do notice is that this boxwork resembles a massive spider web a bit too much for comfort. Even though it's just a geological anomaly, it's hard to look at the boxwork and not imagine tons of cave spiders skittering along those thin strands of hardened minerals. Now, let me take you to a place that seems to be out of this world. There's nothing mysterious or dangerous about this place, but it's kinda unique. Life inside this cave has been isolated from the outside world for about 5.5 million years. And it does show. See for yourself. Because of such long isolation, the conditions inside Mobile Cave are like nowhere else in the world. Despite a severe lack of sunlight inside the cave and the toxicity of the air, a unique ecosystem is flourishing there. The cave is located a few miles west of the Black Sea in Romania, and it was first found in 1986. These days, you can only visit it if you have special permission. But even if you have it, the central caverns are guarded naturally. by super narrow limestone tunnels and vertical shafts. So, those who are familiar with claustrophobia shouldn't enter this place. In the depth of the cave, the air has twice less oxygen than the air outside. It contains a lot of carbon dioxide and hydrogen sulfide, which means it's not the freshest air you can breathe. It's also pitch black inside the cavern. But despite, or should I say, thanks to, this cocktail of extremely harsh conditions, the site is a true goldmine for biologists. Life seems to be booming here. In a 1996 study, scientists identified 48 species living there. 33 of them are unique to the cave. Most of the creatures inhabiting the cave are tiny. They have long limbs and antennae, helping them navigate in the dark. They also have no vision and lack pigment, which makes sense. Why would you need to be able to see if you live in total darkness? And why would you need to be pretty and colorful with no one to see you? Now, get ready to explore one more cave. No less amazing, but very different. This is the Giant Crystal Cave, aka Cave of the Crystals, in Mexico. These massive crystals were found in 2000 by a mining company after the water was pumped out of the cave. 2 miners then entered the drying cave on foot and saw the crystals. These awe-inspiring crystals are actually massive gypsum pillars hidden 984 feet underground. Scientists estimate that the crystals could have been already growing for 500,000 years. That's why many of them are so long and wide that you can walk across them. Unfortunately, visiting this wonder of nature is impossible at the moment. But maybe it's for the better, since Giant Crystal Cave is a dangerous place that can easily turn into a trap. For tens of thousands of years, it was filled with groundwater, which was originally pushed upward into the opening by a magma chamber located in the depths of our planet. The magma under the cave kept the water hot, but eventually, the temperature of the water dipped below 136 degrees Fahrenheit. As a result, the water started to fill with calcium and sulfate, whose particles began to recombine into gypsum, and then white-tinted crystals took over the cave. And since they stayed underwater, they were able to keep growing.
There's a mysterious island that appears and disappears like magic. Just like Schrödinger's cat, this Schrödinger's island exists and doesn't exist at the same time. Officially, it's called Sandy Island, and it once appeared in maps, but it was never there in real life. Australian scientists decided to solve the mystery once and for all by embarking on an adventure to find this elusive archipelago. But when they reached the coordinates, all they found was endless blue waves. It's like the island was playing a game of hide-and-seek with them. This story goes back to 1876. A whaling ship was crossing the area and reported an island. Whoever saw it said it was over 15 miles long north to south and around 3 miles wide, about the size of Manhattan, so not so tiny at all. But every time researchers went to visit the area, they found nothing. So in 1974, an official mission from New Caledonia declared that Sandy Island was simply not a thing and excluded it from all maps. People went on with their lives until they noticed that the island was appearing on Google Earth as a black blob. In 2012, another Australian expedition went out to check out the area to get some explanations. They had to write a eulogy for the long-lost island and explain what could have created this mess. For starters, mapping technology wasn't at its peak back in the 1900s. It was easy to get the coordinates wrong. Then there was the fact that the area is big on volcanic activities. It's likely that volcanic lava cooled down and created a raft of some kind. Let's say that the whaling ship went by, saw the volcanic raft, and thought it was land from a distance. But hey, it's just a guess. Humans have ventured far and wide across the globe, and it may have seemed at some point that we discovered each and every nook of our planet. But when Mount Lico popped up on Google Earth, scientists were overcome with excitement. This hidden gem in northern Mozambique is no ordinary rainforest. It's nestled inside a volcano. Determined to confirm the existence of this mysterious forest, Experts assembled a team of top-notch scientists and specialists from around the world. The journey to Mount Lico was no walk in the park, with a daunting vertical rock climb standing between them and the forest. But after 6 years of planning and preparation, they were ready for the challenge. Once they got there, they saw it was even better than they imagined. The place was like a perfectly tended garden. The forest sounded unique and different from other rainforests. There were some insanely huge caterpillars that looked dangerous. And they even found ancient pots and evidence of an untouched human ecosystem. Ooh. Terra incognita means unknown land. And one of the largest unknown territories being uncovered today is the land beneath Antarctica's ice sheets. Below the snowy surface, there is an entirely new world of canyons, waterways, and lakes, which are now being mapped. One can't help but wonder, is there really liquid water below Antarctica's frozen surface? Yep. Water can exist without freezing due to pressure. The liquid water is the result of Earth's warm interior, and that's how we get things such as Lake Vostok. Now, you can't see it, but Lake Vostok is right here. Located in East Antarctica, it lies beneath 2.5 miles of thick ice. This huge lake is about 4,800 square miles. Humans could only discover it with the help of some top-notch technologies like seismic soundings and ice-penetrating radars. According to these scientists, it's likely that the lake has been there for up to 15 million years. Bhutan is on the map for, among other things, being the happiest country in all of Asia. But it kept a hidden gem for all these years, one of the world's tallest unclimbed mountains, Kunkar Pansum. Bhutan is enmeshed in the glorious Himalayan mountains. That's why the climbing community was beyond excited when they discovered an untouched mountain. Imagine being the first person to climb an unexplored peak. That would probably guarantee you a spot in the Guinness World Records for sure. The mountain has been untouched because of a Bhutanese law. For locals, the mountain peak is a sacred site, shrouded in mystery and legends. One of their beliefs is that the sacredness of climbing a mountain lies not in reaching its peak, but in truly communing with the mountain and enjoying the process. We got to admit, that is a bit of a newsflash for Westerners. If you're ever in the state of New York, make sure you check out the Aglo General Store. You'll have to drive somewhere around the Catskills to find a beautiful, grand, big nothing. Aglo is one of America's most famous paper towns, aka a fake town. But this case is different from Sandy Island. Aglo Town never existed, and it wasn't a mistake. You see, there's an old copyright practice amongst map makers. They add in paper towns so they can know when someone is simply copy-pasting their work. What they didn't expect is that this would get completely out of hand. Some say that one day a guy picked up a map at a gas station that had Aglo Town marked in it. The person decided to open a store over there and named it Aglo General Store. Some say the guy who opened the store faced a lawsuit from the map makers. Anyways, it only lasted enough years to become a national joke. Americans drove from all over the U.S. to get a picture of the town's fake welcome sign. And then we've got Bermeja Island, located in the Gulf of Mexico. This funky island appeared on many maps of the 16th and 17th centuries. It was probably drawn by Spanish explorers. Sure, the exact location varied from map to map, and its name sometimes appeared as Bermeja, but its existence was certain enough. The Bermeja Island was last seen in a 1921 Mexican map, and then, poof, it dropped out of the horizon altogether. People started talking and wondering, did the island sink? Was it destroyed? In 2009, 3 official investigations happened to search for the island. They used high-tech technologies to scour the Mexican seabed, but Bermeja was nowhere. Researchers had multiple guesses on what it could be. Let's delve on one of these ideas. The idea was probably made up by old-day explorers to mislead their enemies in search of land and gold. Well, that seems plausible. Now, let's take a look at Rio de Janeiro. Once, the city was filled with informal territories. These places are known as slums or favelas. They're like mini-cities inside the big city. Some favelas are known to be underprivileged territories, where dwellers don't get the same urban perks as other citizens, such as the sewage system and garbage pickups. These slums grew so quickly that the government didn't have time to keep track of their developments. So today, it's usually the dwellers themselves that name the streets and make do with whatever they have at their disposal. One of the biggest slums in Brazil is located in Rio de Janeiro, the so-called Hacienda, and it was only recognized as a neighborhood by the local government in the 1990s. Our own ocean floor is less mapped than Venus, Mars, and the Moon. In fact, 95% of our oceans are unexplored. Strange, right? We do have the available technology, which is mainly sonar soundings, sending wave sounds to the ocean bed and registering what they hear back. One of the main advantages of mapping the seabed more thoroughly would be to get more insight to marine hazards such as earthquakes, tsunamis, and volcanic eruptions. Plus, there are so many unidentified marine life. This could give us a great insight into preservation and discovering the true dynamics of our marine ecosystems.